Hello and welcome to a new lesson. On this lesson we're going to talk about keyframes, and keyframes are really important on After Effects and any other animation software. A keyframe is basically a frame that defines the starting point and the ending point of any smooth transition. For example, if we want this object to go from this point to this point, we can create keyframe on this point and a keyframe on this point, and if we hit play we will create a smooth transition from this from point A to point B in a smooth way. So that is what a keyframe is. So if we go, this composition is way too long, it's 30 seconds, so let's change this. For starters, let's set it to maybe 5 seconds. And a very important thing here on the timeline, you can see that we have a lot of things going on here on the timeline. If we drag this handle, you can see that we zoom in a lot on the timeline and we start seeing all the frames. So frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to the first second. If we zoom out, we just see the seconds. So that's very useful if we are doing, for example, an animation that lasts like 2 minutes or 5 minutes or something. It's really helpful to have this one. You can change the zoom as well by dragging this handle to the left or to the right, and you will zoom to a specific time. And this time ruler, it's really important because this marks the work area. For example, if we just want the composition to last 2 seconds, we can drag this handle here, and now the composition, if we hit play, will last just 2 seconds. And if we want to trim the timeline here, just right click and select on trim comp to work area, and now the composition lasts 2 seconds. But we're not going to do that right now. Other way to do that is to, for example, if you want the composition to last 3 seconds, you can go to the second 3 and tap the N key on your keyboard, and for ending, and if you hit the B from beginning, you can make the beginning to this point. So these are really helpful too. By the way, you will notice that when I hit play on After Effects, sometimes it takes a long time to play the animation, but don't worry about that. This is just because I'm recording, and of course After Effects takes a lot of things from the computer and also the recording software. So this won't happen to you, you will be fine. After Effects is really fast, it's a really fast software. Of course, it also depends on what computer you have. Of course, the better the computer, the faster the program will render when hit play. So back to the keyframe. Let's take our first shape. As you can see, I created 4 shapes, 4 circles. Now let's grab our first shape and let's open the transform for position. Just as I showed you, just press the P for position, and now you can see that let's create a keyframe. You can see that we are showing the position. Now, as I said before, I want this circle to go from this point to this point animated. So in this point we're going to create a keyframe, and to create a keyframe, you can see right next to the position, to the attribute name, you can see this stopwatch, the time vary stopwatch. If you click on this stopwatch, you will create a keyframe. You can see now on the timeline we have this little diamond here. This represents a keyframe. This represents as a value which is encapsulated here. If you double click on it, you can see that it shows the parameter for the position. For example, it's the object is on this pixel on the x-axis, and on the y-axis it's on this position. So here, that's what a keyframe is basically. It's like a storage for a certain value of a parameter. So I created this keyframe, and now I want a new keyframe on this position. Of course, I have to go to another second, because otherwise he won't be moving. So I go to the first second, and I have two options now. I can create a new keyframe by clicking here on this add or remove keyframe, and you can see that I created another keyframe, and now I can change the position like this. You can see that I'm creating, this is a motion path. You can see that it shows the motion, the path that the object is following. So I have this option, or I can just, instead of creating a keyframe, just go to the first second and manually move the object, and this will also create a new keyframe with these other values. If you double click on it, you can see that it has different values on the y-axis. So now if I go to the beginning of the animation and I hit play, to hit play you can either press the spacebar or the 0 on the num part. You can see that I created a simple animation, and that's what we came here for. So now we have our first animation with keyframes. Now if I move this keyframe closer to the first one, of course the animation will be faster, because this parameter is taking a shorter time. Instead, if I place it further into the animation, it will take longer. So that's very basic stuff, really. Alright, let's leave it on 1 second. Alright, now if I go to another second, another part of the timeline, and create a different position, if I hit play, the object will move to that position, but it won't move directly to this position, but it will pass by this first keyframe, like this. Now if I remove this keyframe, then it will go from this point to this point directly. Like this. So you can see how easy it is to work with keyframes. So let's go back to our previous keyframes. Actually, I'm going to remove these keyframes and go back to 0, and I'm going to grab my pen behind tool and change the anchor point to the middle on every circle on my composition. Alright, I'm going to animate all of them using these keyframes, these position keyframes, as I used it before. So I'm going to take my first circle, and I'm going to create a keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch. Here's my keyframe. Now I'm going to move to the first second, and I'm going to create a new keyframe on this point. So this circle will go from point A to point B in 1 second. Now I want this shape, this second shape, to move the same way. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go to the second, number 2, and I'm going to go to the other circle and I'm going to copy this parameter. You can see that it's on 873, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it on my second shape. Now these two shapes will be at the very same point on the y-axis. So this one takes 1 second and this one takes 2 seconds. Alright, I'm going to lower the resolution because when I'm recording, After Effects goes really slow. So I'm going to change it to quarter so that it doesn't take so much. Alright, now for the third shape, I'm going to repeat the same process. I'm going to create a keyframe here, and now on the third second, I'm going to copy the same parameter. And for the final shape, repeat the same process. Now on the fourth second. Now if I hit play, you can see that all of them move to a different rhythm. This is faster, this is slower, slower, and slower, because this one is taking 1 second to go from point A to point B, and this one is taking 4 seconds to do the same thing. Now we don't have to change only the position. We can change, for example, the opacity. For example, I'm going to take shape 2 and I'm going to take the opacity by hitting the T key on my keyboard, and I'm going to create a keyframe. I'm going to create a keyframe for on the first second, and I'm going to tell this object that on the second, this second, it goes like this. So when I hit play, you can see that this shape disappears because it's going from 100% opacity to 0% opacity. If you leave the cursor, you can see also the parameters 100% and 0. So you can see that it's moving as well as lowering the opacity, and it's all done with keyframes. And just like with the position, if I move this keyframe closer, it will be faster. If I move it to the right, this will take long. So for now, let's remove these keyframes because I now want to talk about the types of keyframes on After Effects. For that, I'm going to move all these keyframes to the first second so that all the spheres, all the circles move the same way. We need to adjust this opacity, and now we're set. Now if we hit play, all of them fall at the same time. Let's zoom in a little on our timeline, and you can see that the keyframe is sort of like a diamond. This is the normal type of keyframe, the most commonly used type of keyframe. But what if I want maybe this transition to be a little smoother, to have some kind of like independent movement? I want to use another type of keyframe. So for example, let's leave this circle like this, and now let's take the second circle, and we're going to take this first keyframe and we're going to right click on it and go to Keyframe Assistant, and now let's select Easy Ease Out. You can see that the keyframe is now different. It's looking kind of like an arrow pointing left, and now what it does is that if we hit play, it moves a little slower. You can see that it starts a little slower than the rest of the circles. So this adds a little more realism to the movement. When we have an animation, we can work with these types of keyframes so that the animation doesn't look so robotic, but instead it looks so much fluent and smoother. So this is one of them, the easy ease out. In fact, if you take a closer look, this is the motion path. It shows the path that the object follows to get to the other point, and you can see all these little points right here. You can see how these little points get a little tighter here on this end because it's moving faster on this point. So I'm going to take the third circle and I'm going to take the final keyframe and I'm going to right click on it, keyframe assistant, and click on easy ease in. And this does the same thing as the other one but on reverse. You can see that this circle goes faster and gets slower in the end. So you can see that the movement is so much better than the first one, because on the first one, if we hit play, it goes from this point to this point like in a very robotic way, but these two are moving so much smoother. So this is really nice. Now let's take the final circle and we are going to grab both keyframes. To grab both keyframes, just click on one and control click on the other one, or just grab your cursor and draw a line like this. Now I have selected both keyframes. Right click on it and click on easy ease. Easy ease is like mixing the easy ease in and the easy ease out. You can see that the shape is like kind of like an hourglass, and what it does is to mix all of them. So now if we hit play, you can see that all of them move in a different rhythm. So that's it for the type of keyframes. Of course, we are not going to use all kinds of keyframes on one single animation. It depends on what we want, on how smooth we want the animation to be, of course. But that's basically what we need to know about keyframes. Of course, as with all the other things that I have already told you, we're going to go much deeper into all of these things when we are creating all the exercises. So let's move on to the next lesson.